inspired. And here we go.
And Jovanka, you'll be happy with this one.
Oh, I am delighted. It's my favourite opening.
Caro-Kann.
Oh, yeah.
I can recognise it, but I know that's your favourite opening.
He's not mouse-lipped. Maybe he wanted the Sicilian, but no, it's a Caro-Kann. And the Caro-Kann keeps tension, right, Jovanka? Yeah. There's not many ways to force a draw for white, and that's the key. That's the first step for Anish. Just survive the opening and not allow Pragg to force a draw, to make things simple, to trade queens. And already, look at this, Pragg thinking for 30 seconds on move 2. That's very rare.
Yeah.
And it's the mind games have started.
Definitely.
Pragg trying to pick maybe a safer variation.
If I were Pragg and I was looking for a clear-cut way to kind of maintain just simple chess, I would be tempted actually to play something called the exchange variation. When the pawn appears on d5, just take it off. And we might see it on the board just yet. He's developed the knight, and now I'm expecting Anish to pick up that d pawn and challenge the e4 pawn. And well, we see two knights instead. Yeah,
the two knights variation, named very sophisticatedly because white's knights come out. Yeah, I wonder who came up with that one. They were like, oh, I can't think of a name for this. Oh, there are two knights out in the opening. Let's call it the two knights. But yeah, black here. I think this is the first critical moment for Anish Giri. He brings his bishop out. This is what you recommended in your book, Jovanka.
It is, and after bishop takes knight. And now the trendy move is just simply to push the e-pawn one square forward and liberate the dark square bishop.
Yeah, so black has parted with the bishop pair. Now white has the two bishops after that bishop-knight trade. But look at that centre for black, rock solid. The triangle formation, we sometimes call it. Yeah, black has no weaknesses at all in this structure. Often you set up all your pawns on light squares. And there's a couple of ways to play this. The ambitious way is to try and fianchetto black's dark square bishop, but that's very risky as well, as far as I know. So how can Anish spice this one up, create some winning chances? At least a lot of pieces will remain on the board for a while. I don't think he should go for any of those variations. There are a few where black tries to equalize by force, because that will lead to potential simplifications. But yeah, Pragg choosing a decent variation here, not trying to refute the Caro-Kann, not trying to win after the opening, which many people try to do nowadays. It's frustrating every time I play the Caro-Kann. They're going straight for me, really aggressively. But yeah, he's just taking a quiet... This is what we predicted.
Definitely. And I agree with you. I don't think he should fianchetto his bishop. And instead, he plays another ambitious approach, developing the dark square bishop, preventing white's d-pawn from moving two squares forward. And Pragg will castle his king to safety, and one of the black knights is now likely to develop. I'm not sure which one will come out. Normally, the black kingside knight clears the path for him to castle, but I'm not sure if it's in this exact position. You're the expert here, Jovanka. I should defer to you. Yeah, and this is this is one of those. I'm trying to recall my theory, and I'm thinking that the knight just comes out to, as you say, probably to the e7 square or to the f. I can't remember, David.
Me neither.
And this is one of the big problems with being a chess author, is that everyone expects you to remember your own lines. And you're like, I did study it. Trust me, I did. I just can't tell you the subtleties right now. But I think it's just to develop the knight.
All the viewers at home have to go out and buy Jovanka's book to remember the subtleties. She's keeping them...
Yeah, well, I actually didn't recommend this line. I actually recommend developing the knight out much earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. And I guess that's another beautiful thing about the Caro-Kann, is you're so flexible, right? Often when I play the Caro-Kann, I'm just freestyling. I'm just trying to, as long as I have a solid pawn structure like Anish does here for black in the center, then not that much can go wrong. So as long as you play quite logically, you will survive and get a playable middle game. So he does bring his knight out, getting ready to castle the black king. Pragg's gone back to his shaking. And yeah, there's a few ways to develop here for white. Normally, you want to push white's d-pawn two squares forward, so you can support that by bringing a rook across. You can just push white's d-pawn one square. You need to get organized. White still has a few pieces that are asleep. And yeah, if you don't do anything, then black's pieces will harmonize very easily. It's very simple to play black in these types of positions. Unless white is very direct, actually.
Yeah, and obviously, because the knight has moved to the square in front of the king, you also have to think about ideas that black could have with it advancing with his pawns in the right side.
Yeah, so You think maybe he's going to try and attack the white king, Anish Giri?
Yeah, he might do at the right time. Yeah, normally in the Caro-Kann, normally what you do is you never attack from the onset. You develop your pieces first, you castle your king, and only then do you think about pushing pawn breaks. Because the great thing with the Caro-Kann is that when you do actually get your pawn push, it's actually really, really good for you. And this is why often white's like, no, you're not moving, my friend. And there you see it. Pragg is putting pressure on the dark square bishop. It moves.
Yeah, it moves, but now it has lost control over that d4 square that we've talked about. So white's other central pawn, the d pawn, there we go, steps forward 2 squares. Pragg has occupied the centre, combined with the fact he has the bishop pair and he's got a slight lead in development, having castled. It's looking pretty good for Pragg, I've got to say. Maybe Anish Giri is fine, but in terms of winning, it's going to be extremely difficult.
And he captures in the centre. Oh, this one is going to be a very tough nut to crack because, yeah, black's position is very solid, but as David says, it's going to be very difficult to generate winning chances with those knights.
Yeah, and black's pieces, black's knights aren't so active right now. He activates his queen. White's knight on the edge of the board was going to re-centralise itself anyway. It wasn't well placed there. I'm assuming Pragg is going to bring it back where it came from. It looks like white's wasted a lot of time with his knight there, but black's wasted time with his bishop, and it has also forced black to clarify the centre, so white's knight has achieved what it wanted in the first place. And, OK, he doesn't. He steps a pawn forward. Also quite logical. And, yeah, maybe black's queen sortie hasn't really achieved too much. I'm just fearful for Anish Giri, actually, if white continues pushing pawns in the centre. White's c-pawn can step forward now.
Yeah.
Black is the one playing for equality, is far from playing for the win here.
I agree with you here. I think black is OK.
Yep.
He's slightly worse. But this is bearing in mind that Anish is in a must-win situation. This is not the position you want. This is the kind of position you perhaps want if you're in a draw situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not Anish's style. Normally, when he has black Anish, as we've seen in his chessable courses on, you know, the French, the Sicilian Najdorf, the Sicilian Dragon, all his chessable courses, he wants to defend actively. He wants to be very dynamic. He wants to have winning chances in his pocket if the opponent goes astray. Here, even if white messes up slightly, it's hard to imagine what can go wrong. Maybe you trade a set of pawns in the centre and black has active minor pieces finally. Black's knights get into the game, but will Pragg allow that? Not really. So we do see there Anish Giri, his French defence chessable course, a great one, I must admit. I've gone through that myself, but this is not his ideal setup. I think maybe choosing the French defence or choosing the Sicilian Dragon or something along those lines would have been a better bet against Pragg. The Caro, I love the opening. We both do here in the studio, but yeah, it looks like Pragg has found a nice way to keep things calm, keep things solid for white. Black does eventually castle, and now white will continue developing his pieces.
Yeah, and I'm just giggling away because I do have to share with you, David, one of the answers to our caption this competition. You'll really appreciate this joke. And it's from Sutusma Kutusha. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name, but says, when the game you are commenting on lasts more than 300 moves.
That's my favourite one of the day. This is clearly a loyal viewer of the tour.
I love this chess humour. I mean, that was actually Simon's face when I remember when the World Championship lasted like 136 moves, game six.
Yeah.
And you were just buzzing and we were like, oh my goodness me, he's going on.
We were live on the show for nearly 9 hours, no breaks, and I was feeling pumped. I was feeling energized, but Simon, yeah, I think he needed, he wanted to lie down after that marathon. Yeah, great caption there.
Yeah.
Do love those long games, those long grinds.
Keep those answers coming. And remember, if you do have any questions, thoughts, remember you can tweet us using the hashtag #ChessChamps and we will try and feature them on the show.
Yep. And meanwhile, the first serious think of the game from Praggnanandhaa. Both sides have played very quickly up to this point. And I think that's great news for Giri, especially, who struggled under time pressure. But yeah, it's Pragg to decide what to do first. He wants to develop white's dark square bishop, but maybe no good squares or no effective squares for it yet. So he brings this rook across, and that white dark square bishop is going to go to d2 to kick away that black queen in the corner. So very logical stuff. And I'm expecting black to do the same at some point, to centralize the rooks. Maybe mobilize the black knights as well. A lot of choice for Giri. Maybe I've been too harsh on the opening choice. He's still all right for now.
He's still all right. I mean, with this pawn structure, the ideal scenario for black is if they were to trade off the dark squared bishops. You're okay with the pair of knights, that's not a problem. And the whole idea would be just to use the half-open D line to put pressure on white's D4 pawn. So I don't know how to get rid of the dark squared bishops.
Let's, as an example, let's move the rook across, and if the bishop attacks the black queen, then let's block and trade off those bishops. I mean, this is white helping black slightly, getting rid of the bishops. But
totally.
Right. But this is the end goal, and this pawn becomes a bit weak, right?
Yeah, and then once, just to kind of go fast forward a few moves, I mean, black was just to try and attack the queen. The queen will take a step back, and then you just bide your time, because the great thing about black's pawn structure, the e6 and c6 pawns, is that they're very flexible. Either of them can move. And once the black rooks have doubled, well, white will have to calculate those two pawn advances at every turn.
Yeah, actually, this pawn is almost impossible to defend sufficiently for white. The problem is here you have a light squared bishop, meaning you can't defend your pawn on a dark square. And not only that, black's knights are very flexible, and they can start improving, attacking these pawns. Yeah, I think that's the key, breaking up the bishop pair. And if Anish Giri can do that, if he can trade off these two pieces, then he will some fine day have winning chances. But it is hard to manufacture. So, yeah, right now I'm expecting this rook move maybe, or one of the rook moves. Also, he could consider starting by attacking the white queen, but no, he goes on the front foot. First of all, playing very dynamically, and he's attacking this misplaced knight. He's not giving white the opportunity to bring it back into the center, and he is hoping that, for example, again, if the queen is attacked, he can slide in and block, exchanging, making this dream trade, getting rid of white's bishop pair. So I think here Pragg should just be very calm and step back.
I agree. Actually, this is also a very thematic pawn break. I mean, normally you don't tend to do it in this particular type of position, but it's something to have in your arsenal, because the whole point is that after pawn takes pawn, black is basically saying that, you know, you have two pawn weaknesses, I just have that bad pawn on c6. But ultimately, those two pawns in the middle are just going to be so much worse.
Yeah, long term. These are targets. The more pieces that get exchanged, the weaker they will become. Sometimes white, with the space, is actually overextended, right? That's kind of the principle of the Caro-Kann. White gains space, but it comes with downsides too, long term. So, OK, interesting break by Anish Giri. Attacking this white knight now. I'm assuming it comes back because there's no other safe square. What else could Pragg consider? I don't think you should really exchange off these pawns first, because now, once the white knight does retreat to safety, black is first to occupy the open file. Also, the key here is black has a nice outpost for his knight in the middle of the board. This knight is, I mean, imperious now. It just jumps in, threatening knight forks. You can never get rid of it on this outpost. And yeah, this looks very good for Giri if he can achieve it. But Pragg needs to stay calm, maybe just retreat his knight, and the game goes on. Still very tense.
Thinking now for 2 minutes, Pragg. He only needs a draw in this game to win the match. And both of these two players are sitting in Shack 15 in San Francisco. And we're learning during this tournament that San Francisco really is a place to be if you are a chess player or if you do love chess. So many chess people are in San Francisco. And of course, they're taking their time to drop by Shack 15 to look at the top chess players.
John, you're a celebrated chess author. You've been an insider in the game for so many years. What is your view on how chess has changed over the years?
Well, I started playing in the fall of 1972, and things have changed and quite dramatically. I'd say a couple things that come immediately to mind are there's a lot more women playing. There's a lot more juniors playing. There's no smoking in tournaments, which I think is a most welcome development. And I think also that there's a lot more professionals in the game. I think there's just a lot more global interest in the game. It used to be that chess was pretty much, Europe, United States, and maybe a little bit in South America, and of course in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. But today, it's really, really a worldwide game.
You started playing around the Fischer-Spassky match and the aftermath of it, like many of your colleagues. How did that match influence you?
Well, it was a time when there was a lot fewer things competing for people's interest. And so, there was no cable TV, there was no internet. So every evening, you would turn on to the news, and there'd be Walter Cronkite, our big newscaster, and he'd be talking about the Vietnam War, he'd be talking about domestic affairs. But first, in Reykjavik, he'd lead off in what happened in the games, and all the newspapers covered the match extensively. So my friends and I, we just got interested in it, and I was very fortunate that I lived near Seattle, Washington, in a town called Tacoma. And they had a very active club at the time. And so the local newspaper reported they were having a tournament, and I went to it, and somehow 50 years have passed since then.
Wow. And do you feel that chess has been able to replicate the glory that surrounded it during that match?
I think that some of the things about that match would be hard to replicate. For one, I don't think we would like to see another Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, but obviously that got people's interest, heightened even more than it would have. It also helped that, Fischer and Spassky were two really unique individuals that, if it had been two other players, it might not have attracted that much attention. But even, I would say that more recently, during the pandemic, with the Queen's Gambit, with all these internet streamers, with all these brilliant internet online tournaments, I think it's just as big in its own way, but in a different way.
You've captained the very formidable United States team in over 25 team events. Tell us about that and what that experience has been like.
Well, I got to be a relatively reasonable player. I got to be an IM with a FIDE rating of around 2470 and a couple Grandmaster norms. But after captaining the first Olympiad team, I quickly realized, as Clint Eastwood would say, a man's got to know his limitations. And I definitely realized, to be associated with all these great players, it's been a real privilege and a real honor. And there have been a lot of really memorable events that, been held in places all around the world I would never have probably visited otherwise. So it's been a real pleasure.
And what's been the most important part of your job as a captain to the team of the United States?
I think just to let them be who they are. I think that I've been very fortunate that I've never had any real problematic players, if you will. We've always had very good team spirit, and the players have always really enjoyed being around each other. So my job's been pretty easy, just go out there and let them do their stuff, and if they do well, they get the credit, and if I have problems with the team, it's my fault.
You sound like a great captain. I have to ask you, with such strong players in the team, such established grandmasters, does that also sometimes get a little challenging?
If the Olympiad was held more than once every 2 years, it would be a bit of a challenge, because chess is both an individual and a team game, but it's primarily an individual game. And so it is hard, when you have players that are playing against each other all the time, and it's their livelihood and their profession and everything they're dedicating their lives to, it is hard for them to shift gears, but every 2 years they manage to do it.
And you're also heading for the World Team Championship in just about 2 days, but it's a very different team for the United States this time. How do you assess your chances?
Well, this is a really tournament that's really hard to predict, because it's being played at a very unusual time control. It's 45 minutes aside with a 10-second increment. So it's neither rapid nor classical. It's sort of going to be like classical chess at the beginning of the games, and it'll be like blitz at the end of the games. So it's really kind of hard to predict. The tournament was originally going to be in March of this year, but obviously events made that impossible, and so they rescheduled the tournament. in the same venue where it was going to be before, in Jerusalem, but on relatively late notice. We got about, I think, 6 weeks before the tournament was going to be held. The problem is with professional players at the very top, they usually set their schedules out about a year in advance. So we're not sending our quote A team, if you will, but the U.S. bench is very, very deep right now. And so I think we have a very competitive team, but there's a lot of other good teams, including the Indian team, which again, doesn't have like all of its very highest rated players, but it has plenty good enough players, I assure you.
And it's going to be Hans who's going to be leading the U.S. team. How do you feel about that, having him on top board?
Well, I've known Hans since he was 10 years old. He joined the Mechanics Institute Chess Club when he was a beginner. And in the first year that he was playing at our club, he went from beginner to expert, to 2,000 rated, which is, pretty impressive. And I realized at that time he was going to be a very special player. And he's certainly shown that. I mean, he's 2,700 FIDE. So I think it's going to be a great challenge for him leading the team, and I'm excited to see how he does.
We wish you and the team all the best. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you very much for having me.
John Donaldson, he has a very cool job being team captain for the talented team USA. And another talent is young Pragg, 17 years old. He only needs a draw in Game 4 here against Anish Giri. We actually only had, I think, 2 moves because Anish was thinking for as long as Donaldson was talking. But the bar has jumped up slightly for Pragg.
Yeah, and that's purely because Anish needs to win, so he's taking big risks. And I've got to commend Pragg as well for, again, just surprising us, surprising Anish. With some really anti-positional chess, but there's always tactical reasons behind it. And we have to jump in to show why Pragg has just won a pawn. And I think he will emerge a pawn up in this transition. So we did leave it around here. We've just seen a trade of dark squared bishops, which we weren't actually supporting for white. But now, after pawn takes pawn, which again we weren't supporting, because it looks like white's knight has to retreat. And if it does, remember, black's knight gets this dream outpost in the center. But Pragg had this sneaky idea up his sleeve, and I'm not sure I would even have this on my radar. His idea was, despite the knight being attacked, to swoop in, jump in with the white queen, creating a skewer along this line, but also a pin on the b file, meaning that white now cannot or does not need to worry about his knight being captured because black's queen would drop off. And just due to this tension, white would win a pawn. White is attacking this guy, and no way to save it. It's just really sneaky. It's kind of going against all wisdom, but making it work using tactics. And that meant that Anish Giri, in this position, moved his knight instead, attacking the white queen, trying to force it back, and it did indeed retreat to defend its pawn. So, for example, pawn takes pawn now. White recaptures a queen trade. Remember, helps Pragg get closer to that draw. White has also won a pawn. Instead, Anish trying to create some tricks along the d file, trying to create a pin, but Pragg saying, no, I don't care. I'm just going to improve my rook. And I think he's big favourite now to secure at least a draw, maybe even win this game, because Anish is running out of material. The pawn down, big threat of pawn takes pawn. What else is there to do? You might have to go into an endgame now, trading queens, and maybe you can win one pawn back. But even in this endgame, white is the favourite because a bishop is better than the knights, and also these two have great potential. Yeah. Do you see any chance, Jovanka, for Anish?
No, is my answer to that. It's very direct, I'm afraid. But I just think white has a great position, and even if you were to recapture the pawn, as in the position you've got highlighted there in the analysis board, to me, white looks like they have a significant advantage actually there, on account of the 2 versus 1 pawn majority on the left side of the board and the activity of the rooks. And here come the trades. Queen's going to capture, and, well, if the queens are forced off...
Yeah, we actually see the position that we analysed. It has appeared on the board. And, yeah, I mean, you can give this pawn up. Like you said, you can go active with the rooks. You can maybe even go now. And, for example, if the black knight takes this pawn in the centre, you just drop your bishop back. Very safe. And... this is a big weakness. It's an isolated pawn. White's knight doesn't look great, but it is about to re-centralise. Everything's defended. It looks fine. Black is quite active, at least. This is Giri's best hope, but it shouldn't be enough. I think Pragg, with his great endgame technique, should be converting this one, or at least drawing this one.
And Anish Giri, he is our final hope to have tie breaks today because Game 4 ended with a draw between Jan-Christoph Duda and Mamadjarov. And that means Duda takes all 3 points in that match, winning in the rapid portion and winning his second match in a row. He will be on top of the table together with Magnus Carlsen. After day 2, Jan-Christoph Duda, the 2 top players this season, number 1 and number 2 on the tour standings, Magnus and Jan-Christoph.
Yeah, I think we might be seeing a 2-horse race. The others will have something to say about it, but they look so impressive, Carlsen and Duda.
And they only face each other on the final day of the tournament, Jan-Christoph Duda and Magnus Carlsen. Imagine if that match decides the winner of the tournament.
Yeah, one winner to take it all.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Black has regained the pawn, so Giri re-establishing material balance. But he's also offering a rook exchange, and remember, pieces are disappearing. Yeah, they're just simplifying the position towards that desired result for Pragg. And 7 minutes, it's easily enough for the young Indian. It should. I mean, I just can't see any world in which Anish can trick him here.
Yeah.
The only one who can beat Pragg now is Pragg himself by being careless.
Yeah, I agree with you there, David. I mean, the first question on the board is, should you trade off rooks? I would do it, especially if I'm in a draw situation. I wouldn't even hesitate. Just like take those rooks off the board, retreat the bishop to a safe square, and then maybe even just try and trade off another pair of rooks.
Yeah, I mean, just to show this on the board, just to show why we're kind of so skeptical about Anish Giri's chances. Okay, wow, he doesn't even go for the simple approach, Praggnanandhaa. This is very, very determined to trade off pieces. He's forcing an exchange of 1 set of knights now. White's knight at the top of the board. It's protected sufficiently indirectly by White's rook at the bottom and also by White's bishop. And yeah, it's also a double attack. Black's rook on f8 and the knight on f6. Both eyed up by White's knight, and I think he's found a way. Yeah, he's simplifying as we were trying to make happen, but he's found it in an even more direct manner. And the evaluation bar did go down slightly, but that's because he's trying to force a draw, Pragg, and he's odds on to achieve it.
Actually, even if I were in a must-win situation, I think I would. If I saw it.
Yeah, I didn't see it either.
I didn't see it, to be honest. But if I saw it, I think I would play that move because, you know, the rook and bishop work better than the rook and knight. And you have to bear in mind that White has that trump card, those pawns there on the left side. And all he has to do is start advancing those pawns. Synchronize the rook, bishop, push pawns.
Yeah.
Job done.
Exactly, and it sounds simple, but it should be that simple. This knight move, again, forcing an exchange because there's a double attack. If the knights are exchanged now, bishop takes, and yeah, let's assume that this rook trade happens too. As you say, this duo should beat the black duo of rook and knight. There is potential of an awkward pin, slightly awkward pin, but you can break this pin in a few ways. You can step forward with the pawn and then later move your bishop out the way to defend your rook, offer a trade in that manner. You could maybe even be a bit sneaky because black's back rank is vulnerable. You can move the white rook across. And as you say, Ivanka, rook takes bishop. Firstly, this ends in checkmate. You cannot go for this, but rook and bishop, they do work so well. If black gives his king some breathing space, you just bring your rook into the game. Attack this lone pawn. Black's rook is totally stuck. Black's knight unable to really hop around and guard both sides of the board. It's a short-range piece. That's why we prefer the bishop in such endgames. And yeah, what's to be done? If you want to be really cynical and force a draw, just bring your rook up, trade off the remaining rooks. And we're going to see something like this happen in the game. Even a bishop versus knight scenario, the bishop is still the favorite. Pawns on both sides of the board. I think at least you get a draw here. And this is if you really want to force the issue. So the current position is this one, with one set of rooks being traded. And how is Giri ever going to win this? I'm even surprised the evaluation bar says equal. It looks like he's in full control, Pragg, and big time advantage as well now. OK, Giri does try to give some space to his king, but the simple approach now for Pragg, bring the rook in, up, and across.
Anish Giri fighting for his life to take this to tie breaks. Jan-Christoph Duda, he decided it before tie breaks, winning Game 4 against Mamadjarov and winning the match. Congratulations, Jan-Christoph.
Thank you.
2 match wins in a row. You will be on top of the table after today together with Magnus. Are you in top form for the tour finals?
Yeah, hopefully I am. It's difficult to say after only 2 matches, but so far I'm quite pleased with my play, and yeah, hopefully it will be. I will play like this till the very end.
And of course, playing from Poland, I know it's very late for you, probably like 3 a.m. in the morning right now.
No, it's midnight right now.
Oh, okay, so it's not too bad.
No, for me it's like normal timing.
I was gonna say, because I think you are one of the players who stay up all night playing chess and then you sleep in. So this actually suits you.
Yes, I was also in Canada not that long ago, and I'm kind of now, kind of struggling, and so I'm actually going to bed very late, and it's no issue whatsoever to, for me to play in this time, because I'm kind of set, have like, I'm in kind of American time zone right now, so it's totally fine, as if I was in San Francisco.
Yeah. Fantastic. Now, playing against Mamedyarov, who won a fantastic match yesterday, what are you the most happy about with your play today and yesterday as well?
I'm happy that, I've been very solid with Black. I don't think I gave him a lot of chances, to put a lot of pressure. And also, you are always happy with the games you won. But it was like, this Catalan game was very crazy, because, I thought I was basically winning by force and missed his queen e5 response. After that, I was very upset and didn't, fully trust my calculation no more. So, yeah, but we were both low on time, and I was attacking, so that was a good thing. Mm-hmm. And also, I wasn't risking that much apparently, but okay, it got very sharp, and as usual, I couldn't have won. Winning position. Also, I'm very lucky in a way, because I wanted, at one point, I wanted to make a winning combination. Trading, exchanging everything, and then, some pawn race. And I thought I was winning by force, but then I, realized, I thought that there is no reason, to calculate anything sharp. You can do it I was 2 pawn up, so I could have done it, without any calculations. And my instinct just saved me, because I wanted to sacrifice my queen to regain it in 2 moves, but I didn't realize that my knight was pinned, so that would have been actually a losing blunder in 1 move. Uh-huh. So that was that was crazy, but but of course, I was kind of surprised that I couldn't find checkmate, because his king seemed to so vulnerable to me. But I guess it was efficient. Good enough actually. The way I try to convert it. So that was of course a crucial game, and as always there are a lot of adventures in my games, but yeah, I'm very happy, of course, to win it without I need to play tiebreak.
Great match win and 3 points. Finally, Jan-Christer, I want to ask you, because there is some huge geopolitical news today with some missiles hitting Poland on the border to Ukraine. Being at home in Poland, is this something that has sort of worried you or taken some attention from you today?
Actually, I didn't know about it, to be honest.
Oh, sorry to break the news to you.
Of course, it's you can never, feel assured that nothing is going to happen, because I mean, Ukraine is next to Poland, of course, so yeah, it's always kind of tense and very drastic. But yeah, actually, I mean, Poland has, a benefit of being in NATO, so that's for sure a good thing. And right now, I mean, I don't know how, the situation will be handled, to be honest. And but I mean, it's difficult for me actually, to be wise on this topic because I have like absolutely no clue. But of course, I want to state one more time that I'm against any war.
Of course. And we're happy to see you perform so well on the board. Jan-Christoph, best of luck tomorrow as well, and congrats on your second match win today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. He does sound a little tired, Jan-Christoph Duda. It's past midnight now for the young Polish 24-year-old who will be on top of the table together with Magnus Carlsen after day 2. Praggnanandhaa can take his first 3 points in the tournament if he gets a draw in this game. We had a few moves. Is that getting closer?
In one way, yes. So a set of pawns have been traded off. We should still be heading towards that draw. But in another way, I do feel as if Pragg, he's played a bit passively. He took some slightly negative decisions. He could have been more aggressive, more ambitious. He's let the black rook active, which is maybe one downside to what's happened. And also, the white pawn on the edge of the board, the white A pawn, it still takes a while to advance. And if we look at the other side of the board, knights are good when there's only one half to focus on, only one flank to focus on, and that black knight could potentially become a good piece. So, yeah, I'm not writing this one off yet. Maybe I was too harsh on Giri's chances earlier. What do you think, Ivanka? Still should be a draw, right?
Yeah, but I agree with you. I'm a bit puzzled by some of Pragg's decisions. Like, for instance, this bishop move. I mean, it looks a bit strange to put the bishop on the same line as the rook. And there we see a check and the king move to safety because it's very easily handled. You know, the king just steps forward. And what white wants to do is white wants to just advance this pawn. But
Black's rook can easily slide behind this pawn at some point, and you're abandoning your king and all of the pawns around the white king. Yeah, so suddenly there's some risk involved. So it should still be a draw, of course. White's pawn is very dangerous, the white A pawn. Maybe at some point you can push it forward and hope to be ambitious. But black has a clear threat now. How do you defend the white F pawn? The black rook is looking at it. You could step it one square forward, but that comes with a significant risk. Maybe we can show the downside here. If Pragg gets careless and takes his eye off the ball for 1 second, just moves his pawn forward, which is attacked, very natural, then suddenly I'm really worried for his life here. The black pawn stepping forward, and again, if you get carried away, this has all the makings of a mating net. And now you really regret abandoning your king because the black rook is going to slide behind it and trap it. Rook and knight checkmate. This is called the...
Hookmate.
Hookmate. That came up yesterday, actually, as well. Rook and knight teaming up, trapping the opposition monarch. So, yeah, suddenly you don't want to leave dart-squared weaknesses in your camp, and that would happen if you push forward with your pawn. Maybe it's still fine, but yeah, these dart squares for the black knight to jump into, very, very scary suddenly. And if you can't push this pawn forward, maybe you just lose it.
That's what I would do. I would sacrifice that pawn, and I would just go, well, quality is better than quantity, push the A pawn.
Yep, makes a lot of sense, pushing forward 2 squares away from promotion. And if this pawn is gobbled up, I guess you move your rook out the way. I'm not sure exactly where, but let's say a square like this one.
Yep.
The black rook moves behind, and now you step forward.
Yep, and I guess Pragg's idea was just to move the bishop to the long diagonal, queen the pawn.
Yeah.
Simple chess.
Yeah, promoting the pawn on A8. It is a light square covered by the bishop. You still have some work to do, for example, if the black knight stops you from doing that, but as soon as the black knight moves away to prevent you from using the C6 square, you can start going after black's pawns as well. So this should secure safety. Pragg, however, does play a very committal move. He, instead of pushing this pawn forward, he pushes this pawn, attacking the black knight. And I'm still seriously worried for the white king if the black knight, for example, parks itself on the edge of the board. And still the idea of taking this pawn and still some checkmating patterns. For example, if the white king protects this pawn, whoops, check. And a different version of the hookmate, maybe. The king is trapped. And, OK, Giri is going for the white king, which has been abandoned. Wow, okay, suddenly I have a feeling things might be turning.
Ooh.
Will we head towards playoffs? Because, yes, Pragg now is going for this black pawn, but...
Look at the bar.
Exactly. Things are dropping, and the rook and knight combine so well against an opponent's king. And all Pragg needs to do here, all Anish needs to do here is make sure he puts his rook on a safe square. For example, you can plant it now behind white's pawn. Suddenly, yes, you might win one pawn back, but this one is not going anywhere anytime soon. You cannot go back and defend it, really, because now the king is in mortal danger.
Mm-hmm. And the black king is going to snake its way and become a hunter. And this is going to be, we're going to see another mate. Actually, if it puts itself on the g3 square, then the rook will swing across and checkmate on f2, the Vukovic checkmate. So,
yeah, I mean, all sorts of mating patterns. And Pragg is down around a minute now, and he's lost all control. It should still be a draw with best play, you feel, but the computer says +1. That means already the margin for error is tiny. And yeah, the rook and knight combo, we normally say it's inferior to the rook and bishop, but not when the rook and bishop are so far away from each other like this. Black's piece is perfectly placed. Look at the black king. Compare it to the white king. Essentially, black is playing with an extra piece. White's king is just a poor bystander here. Mm-hmm. And, OK, Pragg desperately trying to get his bishop back, covering these squares. That's a good start, stopping the black knight from entering. But, yeah, still, the problem is you drop a pawn.
And you're a pawn down. And every time you grab a pawn, I was going to say, this move is very risky as well, because it allows the black king to step forward.
Yeah, the black king is coming in. It's on the brink. And now pawns are just on one half of the board. Pawns are just on the king side. And knights are better than bishops when it's just on one side of the board. We've been talking about how great bishops are, but now white has lost his pride and joy, the a-pawn. And Anish, time to run in. He's started that run. He is a great endgame technician as well. And Pragg, also strong, but can he compete with a more experienced player? He's already taken some negative decisions. This is why we say don't play for a draw. Play the most principled moves. Just keep long-term advantages. If you scare your opponent with the thought of losing, you're more likely to get the draw long-term anyway. Mm-hmm. Now it's just one-sided. White is begging for a draw. Black is the only one who can win.
Mm.
Drama. Will we see tiebreaks? Will Anish Giri win another game? He's under pressure now, Praggnanandhaa, to get the draw or a win in this game. Yeah. Is a win even possible for Pragg in this game?
Only if Anish burns his bridges and completely gambles. Mm-hmm. But right now, yeah, it's definitely white on the defensive. Look how trapped white's king is on the corner. The one saving grace for white is that he's ready to check from the side with the white rook. White's rook is going to drop back and start kicking the black king away. But, I like this knight retreat from Giri. There was no inroads with that black knight, so now you're rerouting it.
Yeah, and I like this caption from OB1Me. When it's moved 250, David smiles, and the good night closes in 10 minutes. That will have Simon a little bit upset. That is very good.
Poor Simon. Let's hope that never happens. The good night should never close.
And Anish, 44 seconds on the clock. I do feel that Pragg has stabilised the ship somewhat. You know, the rook has come down. It's in a great defensive role. I think the only thing that's missing is for the bishop to come and park itself next to the king.
There we go, Jovanka.
There it can live there. I don't care if it looks as ugly as anything. It's a good defensive piece. And it's very difficult to see a way for Anish to march forward.
Yeah, it will involve rerouting his knight, kind of rotating it back to maybe swapping the positions of the black king and black knight. Black's knight wants to sit on the f4 square that's occupied by the black king right now. We talk about knights on f5, but that's because they're near the enemy king, and the f4 square is black's version. So somehow it will take a few moves, a few maneuvers, but I think that might be the best bet for black. But Anish, he has all the time in the world. We might be seeing this game push to move 100 even. OK, wow, white only has 2 moves to keep the balance already. It's getting critical. White's king should move here, according to Stockfish. Otherwise, black's advantage goes over +1. When it gets to +1, that means already white is on the brink. Pragg, 20 seconds. And, OK, he finds the third best move, but now black's knight is coming in. And... OK, here we go. Stockfish again confirms black has a very strong move. The evaluation's rising in black's favour. Black's knight can come into the d3 square, just next to the black rook. supported there, and yeah, it's from there it will be headed towards that white king. Black also has the passed e-pawn, remember, so once the black knight moves, that black e-pawn could start motoring down the board, and suddenly white's rook is cut off. Black's king is threatening to break onto the third rank. It's critical. It
is critical, and he has to make a move, retreat the bishop, attack the knight, otherwise the black king is going to come in. And how many seconds? 12 seconds, 10 seconds for Praggnanandhaa. And his bishop goes all the way to the b7 square.
This looks very scary. Black's king can march in. Look at this. It's a losing blunder by Praggnanandhaa. He's lost coordination. His bishop's too far away now. And, OK, Black's pawn advances. Maybe this is strong too. I thought maybe the black king can come into g3. Black was threatening to trap the white king on the back rank.
No need. It just says push the e-pawn. I mean, how are you going to stop that pawn from advancing? If you try to give a check, the king is going to come forward. 1 second. Gosh.
Now Black's pawn advances. You can even just defend this knight. A bishop for knight trade won't help white. Black's pawn is going to be the killer.
We're going to see tie breaks.
What?
100%.
This is why you don't play passively for a draw. You don't just play for one result. The white king comes across, but Black's king can come even further in, onto the third rank. Pragg knows he's losing. His body language shows it. Yeah, Black's just playing with 3 pieces. White is playing with only 2. White's king is trapped. Huge threat of checkmate. White's now king is trapped. Black's rook wants to come to the first rank.
And the king has to run away. I mean, he has to put himself on the worst possible squares.
Yeah, there must be a killer blow now. That white king is almost helpless. How can Black continue pushing his pawn? You can't right now because the pawn protects Black's knight. Maybe you give a check, force White's king onto the edge of the board. That looks like a logical first step. Yeah. OK, first he tries to trap again that white king. The other question is, can you get greedy here? Can you just take White's pawns? It looks very tempting.
That is also tempting, but I do feel that you maybe should keep your eyes on the prize.
On the white king.
Keep your eyes on the white king and also promoting your passed pawn. And he gives a check and moves his rook along the third row.
Yeah, he's taking a step back. He's broken the pin now. White now has to find something before the black knight moves. White's pawns are dropping as well. Yeah, the knight is just so good against the bishop when it's just on one flank. White's bishop is just so... I mean, it can't contribute. It's so far away. He's misplaced it.
Pragg shaking his head.
4 seconds for Pragg again.
How's he going to come back from this? The rook is... Remember what to do. And now you can go back to the third option, which is just to get greedy, grab those pawns. And instead, he just mobilizes his knight, puts it on the perfect square.
Yeah, we talked about that f4 square. Look at the black knight. It's ready to take some pawns, ready to give some checks, protects its king. And remember, Black's passed e-pawn. Just push it down the board. White is completely frozen now. White's pieces are so passive. Look at Pragg. He's devastated. He's thrown this game away. He was in the driver's seat. He had an advantage, but he pushed too hard for the draw. And the pawns are starting to drop. If you take this knight now, which has just happened, White's remaining pawn will also fall. Rook and pawn endgames are sometimes drawish, but not when there's a 2-pawn advantage. And White's remaining pawn is also dropping.
And he's shaking his head.
Yeah.
5 seconds.
Yeah, this one is helpless. Black's rook will just take 1 step back.
At the very least, you don't even need to think about that. Just grab the material and win 2 pawns up.
Yeah, look at Pragg. He's going to have to recompose himself for the tie breaks. Heartbreak for the young Indian. And this is experience. This is pure experience. And Anish, as the battle-hardened warrior that he is, he's found a way. He kept the tension, he kept the game going, didn't allow any forced draws, and eventually Pragg beat himself. Self-inflicted, this defeat. And Anish, he's got 10 seconds himself. He does drop back. Yeah, White's remaining pawn is rounded up now. It's dropping.
Yeah. He doesn't even allow White any slither of a chance of a counterplay. You know, he could have made an inaccuracy, allowed the white king to enter the defense. Anish, accurate until the very end.
Yeah, and White's rook trying its best to hold against 2 pawns, but no, this won't last for very long. Black's king can just step out the way, and both the 2 pawns will start advancing. Yeah,
and actually, if you have to give away 1 pawn, I would say just give away the g-pawn. You want to come in and protect your center pawn, and there's no need for anything like that. Just move the king.
Yep, and here we go. Okay, Anish just biding his time, repeating the position to gain a few seconds extra on the clock. I have read somewhere that E and G pawns that we have right now, they are a bit tricky. You've got to be careful how you advance them, when you advance them. Black's rook is a bit stuck right now, but okay, he's going the long way around, Anish Giri. He doesn't want to get the black king stuck in front of his pawns. He's going to kind of bring the king from behind. There we go. And support in this direction. Yeah, he's going to kick the white rook away. And yes, this is, I think, sufficient technique, unless the evaluation bar.
Whoa!
Wow. I mean, it still looks completely winning. What's happening here? Is there a glitch in the matrix? I think there is.
There is.
No, it should still be winning. The problem for white is that slowly and surely black will use his rook. He'll reactivate his rook. He'll kick back the white king and guide the pawns hand in hand further forward. Yeah, there are some scenarios where you could hold a draw here with some checks like this right now, but black's king, if you continue checking forever, black's king will start sneaking in front of its e-pawn and it will use its own pawn as shelter. Yeah, Giri's technique has not been perfect since he got the winning position, but it's still sufficient.
Yeah. Slow and steady wins the race, doesn't it? You don't have to be perfect in these situations. You can be good enough. And the rook goes all the way to the edge. Now is the time to mobilize the rook.
Yeah.
There you go, give a check. And remember, the G-pawn is just irrelevant. It is the E-pawn that you want to preserve, because that is the pawn that you're going to escort to its destination. Oh, hang on a second. I'm just looking. The bar has corrected itself.
What is the defense here? Because if you get greedy now and take this black pawn with the white king, your king is too far away. Black's central pawn is going to march forward. We will see this in the game. Maybe there was a draw there. If there was, it was a miraculous one that I don't think any human would find. And okay, now the white king is pushed onto the edge of the board, and that will spell the end, the beginning of the end at least, for Praggnanandhaa. Black's rook just needs to move on the g-file, look at the white king, it's cut off, and black's pawn in the middle. It's just going to march down the board. We will reach eventually something that we call the Lucina position. I recommend Googling that if you're unfamiliar with that endgame motif. It's maybe the most common way to win a rook endgame when you're one pawn up, the Lucina position. And we will reach that eventually. So that will involve black's pawn coming down to the second rank. The black king might even be stuck in front of it, just sheltering from some checks. But there is a way eventually to promote the black pawn to win white's rook. And yeah, when white's king is cut off on the edge of the board like this, yeah, there's no way to avoid it, simply.
Yeah, and many ways to win. I've just brought up the table base, which is the in-game database, where because there aren't so many pieces on the board, and when this is a situation less than 5-6 pieces, they've been worked out by the computers. Here, totally winning.
Yep.
This is, in fact, a win in 25 moves.
Oh, checkmate in 25.
Yeah.
That's if Anish Giri goes for the quickest win. But yeah, he's found the way. The king comes first. It's going to guide the pawn forward. If the white rook checks from behind, the black king is going to hide in front of its pawn. This is the key. If it had checked from the side, the white rook, the black pawn would have blocked anyway any checks. So this is the way you kind of dodge checks. You have to use the king and pawn in tandem together. 2 seconds for Pragg. He needs to move. He made that move with 1 second. But here we go. We're almost at the Lucina position, where eventually the black rook will build a bridge in order to get the black king from out of the checks, from in front of its own pawn. Now it's going to step back. But building a bridge, that's the Lucina position. The black rook will eventually ride to the rescue and block any checks from the white rook, freeing the black pawn to run. And Pragg resigns.
Wow.
What a game it's been.
What a comeback by Anish Giri, losing the first 2 games, but then winning in 2 must-win situations.